language.
So I think that's the other bit that's even harder than the society piece, which I think we're doing about Islamophobia Awareness Month, all these other
Mhm.
different initiatives, which is how do we change the representation we have at a political level, which is deeply influenced by media, but also by world events, by lobby groups, by, then it becomes a little bit more murkier. So obviously when Labour was in opposition, we were all engaged very well with the Labour Party. But then when Gaza happened, that engagement became very complicated for all of us, actually, because many of us were not satisfied with Labour's position, rightfully. So then we were like, politically homeless because we didn't really have a political home we could agree with. And now when Labour's in government, that's still there. Gaza is still ongoing now, Lebanon too. But again, it's that whole, well, if you're not engaging with us, who are you engaging with? And I think these are really entrenched issues, Sajid. I don't think there's one reason why. I think Michael Gove could be one really big reason why. The 9/11 you've got lots of different things that have took us to this point. But the reality is 3.9 million Muslims, half of them are under the age of 24. They're the emerging workforce, a growing intake of refugee communities due to global wars. And there has to be, where far right is attacking us, we are in the hot seat now inside the WRC. I think that's going to be a big storm now in Islamophobia the next couple of days. So really, irrespective of what the position may or may not be from government, they're going to have to come to terms with what are we going to do with our Muslims? What is the issue? And we also have to come to terms with what are our expectations? What do
Mhm.
we want? And what is our policy? And I think respectively, my MEND and MCB, lots of we had policy recommendations because we understand, okay, we can talk about it, but if they engage, what do we want?
That
If
leads me very, sorry,
Yeah.
leads me very neat, Jazakallah khair, Sarah. Leads me very neatly back to yourself, Abdullah, and to again come on to ask about the question as to how the Muslim community should respond. I see MEND has been set up for a number of years, specifically with the remit of looking at Islamophobia in particular. But it begs the question, and it comes back to um, the organizational work that I've been blessed to be part of over the last 20, 30 years and through Islamic Society of Britain. And in the past, we haven't put as much emphasis on Islamophobia, choosing rather to focus on the positive messaging of Islam. So rather than taking part, or I mean, we have been part of the Islamophobia Week for sure, and we've done events, etc. But in the past, we used to run Islam Awareness Weeks. So it was more about, and we always tried to be extremely positive in that messaging, rather than taking on topics that could be deemed as controversial. It's more about putting up a positive image of Islam, and that has now up to the point now where in the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years, we've got a lot of people questioning, um, you know, um, uh, is that the right take? Because we can't ignore Islamophobia either. We cannot ignore the negative element of it. But just interested to know what your thoughts are on that in terms of by focusing on Islamophobia and the negative elements of the religion, are we just falling into a kind of trap of negativity and potentially trying to constantly firefight and defend, rather than perhaps, as it were, taking the offensive and saying, okay, let's focus on this incredible religion that we have, this incredible message that we have, and the positive that it can do within society.
Yeah, so tackling Islamophobia isn't there isn't one button that or one silver bullet to kind of deal with it. And if you're going to deal with it, part of it means that you have to kind of go head on dealing with the particular discrimination wherever it kind of rears its ugly head. But part of it is actually showcasing the best that Islam has to offer. That's actually a response to how you respond to Islam. In fact, Islamophobia Awareness Month, one of I think it's got two aims basically. One, to highlight the issue of Islamophobia, but the second, to promote, the work and the of the Muslim community within Britain, because what you find is that a lot of people who maybe have views that obviously we're not that could be termed Islamophobic or anti-Muslim or whatever, a lot of it is through ignorance, because there was one particular study done a few years back by Lancaster University where they did a study of media where Islam or Muslims are mentioned in the press over a particular period of time, and they found that for every one moderate mention of Islam or Muslims, 21 were negative. For every one moderate mention of Islam Muslims in the press, 21 were negative. And so when you got this deluge of negativity spreading across communities who have never engaged in Islam with Islam or Muslims, that's a massive task. And so how you have to deal with that is firstly kind of dealing with the issue of the media and the press and challenging the Islamophobia inherent therein, but also showcasing Islam Muslims. And you're right, maybe on the face of it, when you're saying Islamophobia Awareness Month, the first thing that comes about is the discrimination where you compare it to Islam Awareness Week or Islam Awareness Month. You can kind of showcase it about Islam. But that's the issue of promoting Islam and the position of the Muslim community within, especially within Britain, is baked into that conversation as well, and it has to be. And I think you see that in some of the responses that people have had, just from these riots, especially some of the positive ones. And I know, obviously what happened in Liverpool was a case in point. So it was the case of saying, listen, you guys have come with this angst against Islam and Muslims, and you're giving your verbiage, your verbals to this building and the Muslim community here. But come inside and see who we are, and so from the back of that, and so it was that idfa' billati hi ahsan, which is to repel evil with that which is better, for them to know who you are, the engagement that Islam, Abdullah Quayum and his story and the support the Muslims give to their society, and that's baked into part of the challenge of Islamophobia. That's the soft side. That's the stuff that we all have to kind of do. That's part of our da'wah. Yeah. And just to kind of also kind of just tie it into one particular point regarding the challenges that Muslims face, and this is to everyone listening and a reminder to myself, so this issue of people having an issue with you being Muslim isn't a new phenomenon. It's as old as Islam. And in fact, the Quran talks about it. So Allah says in Surah Al-Imran that you will indeed come across difficulties. لَتُبْلَوُنَّ فِي أَمْوَالِكُمْ وَأَنفُسِكُمْ. Allah says you will be tested. And Allah says, وَلَا تَسْمَعُنَّ مِنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا كَثِيرًا. And you will surely hear from those who were given the scriptures before you and those mushrikeen much harm. You will come across much harm. We call that Islamophobia now, but this is Allah speaking to the Prophet and his companions saying, this is going to be part and parcel of your challenge as Muslims. And so, but Allah doesn't leave it there. He gives you a response. How you push back against that harm that you will come across inevitably. وَإِن تَصْبِرُوا وَتَتَّقُوا فَإِنَّ ذَلِكَ مِنْ عَزْمِ الْأُمُورِ. If you have sabr and taqwa, that is the best course of action. What is sabr and what is taqwa? Sabr, people kind of think it's just this patience and just take it on the chin and whatnot. And taqwa is just this inner piety that you have. But grammatically, these words mean so much more and so much heavier. That you have sabr means that you're fortified, that you persevere, that despite these challenges that we're all going to face, that we show our best selves. This is who we are. And the taqwa comes from the root of wiqaya, which is to protect yourself. So having the shield around you. So part of our challenge when we're dealing with the issue of Islamophobia, with all the stats that Zara mentioned about a growing workforce, and I'm from Birmingham. You throw a stone, you hit a mosque. We got like a third of the city is Muslim, 60% of under 16s is Muslim. So this is graduate, I think you can kind of create a system that protect the Muslim community while all this is happening, and that's by kind of embedding yourselves with making sure that wherever Muslims are, they can be and practice their faith as calmly and as fully as they can, whether it's in schools and allowing them parents to know that they can pray in schools, whether it's people going to work and knowing that if they are faced with discrimination, that there are legal defense funds that will kind of protect them, and things like this. So I've kind of gone off on a few tangents, but the idea of tackling Islamophobia is not just about talking about the negatives. Baked into dealing with Islamophobia, showing the best of Islam. When people feel that you're part of them, and the word other found in brother, people need to feel that you care. People, and we show that as part of our pushback against it. Listen, we're here. We're the ones who are on the first line of defense when it came to COVID. The first doctors who died were Muslim. The first, however you want to spin it, Muslims have been here to serve their community, and that's part of our da'wah and part of the pushback against Islamophobia.
Okay, We do have some time for questions and comments towards the end of the discussion. However, if anybody wants to message in the group as we're as the discussion is developing, by all means, just put a message on the text, and then if you actually want to come on and comment yourselves, you can wait towards the end of the discussion with another 15, 20 minutes or so. But if you do want to text on the chat, please do so. And I can get any of the questions or anything that you like to focus on. Just coming back to yourself, Zara, again, and back more towards the time of the riots, and the response, etc. We've obviously tried to cover the response that happened from the wider community and the kind of what you faced when you were on mainstream media, etc. But what about our response and the reaction from the British Muslim community? In particular, we have a number of young people that are involved in the Islamic Society of Britain and the kind of our future, etc. And what's your take on that? And how has it been, and how have people responded to the MCB? Has there been more support as a result of the coverage that's happened? Are more people starting to get active, or is it just a case of still butting our heads in the sand?
So I think that's a really good point, because as soon as you said that, I was thinking of young people. So everything happened very, very quickly in a very short timeline. So our first priority was mosque security, because that's where they were targeting. But it became very clear that young people were very angry and ready to protect the mosques. Ironically, the far right didn't go for Birmingham and Bradford, not really. They didn't go for the areas where there's a lot of our young people. But particularly when they were going to go for London, there was lots of chit chatter that lots of young boys were gathering in Chaiwala to talk about, what they were going to do. And so I think there was a real point where it was like, well, why don't we go out and defend our community? You remember there was a nice video, I can't remember which mosque it was, where the imam came out with lots of young people and said, look, we're going to be peaceful, or they told them to go home in Birmingham. And, so there were instances where, and we sent a public announcement out about being calm, don't fall into the trap. And that went about 120,000 people viewed that. It went quite viral, and all the mosques used it too. So I think the point was, Palestine's another really example of this. These issues do charge our young people, but they have to be guided on how best to use that energy. I think all of these recent incidences have definitely galvanized people to want to do more. How can I help? For some people, it was going to visit the mosque or showing solidarity or raising funds or legal, so there's lots of new things I think that are emerging, which are really positive, which is people want to get involved and offer their support. And how can we help with that? I think there was a lot of expectation on MCB as always. So I think I may have been asked to fight Tommy Robinson in the streets, or maybe take on the far right. I just wasn't really available for that, but certainly he did tweet about me afterwards, because I called him out lots, and then I was like, okay, maybe I'll just calm down a bit. My mom and dad might not be too happy with Tommy Robinson tweeting about me. So, but the moral of the story is that I think definitely our young people and definitely our community are more awake, but perhaps we haven't quite figured out how to coordinate all of that, because we're just much bigger than we've ever been. And the expectation on an umbrella organization is even bigger, because whilst you're trying to figure out which fire you put out first, there's always others. The only thing that I'd say is that I think what was really different about this compared to all the other incidents was that we all felt very threatened and vulnerable. So even in Glasgow, when we heard they could come. So locally, I mean, people were saying like the streets are empty. No one's come out. Muslims are working remotely today. Even I said to my staff, I don't need to go in. That's a bit of a chilling effect. So the idea that we all felt we could personally be harmed, family, mums and dads, so don't go out, you don't need to get shopping, I'll get it for you. So I think that was really different this time around, where we all have a kind of, especially visible Muslim, we kind of felt personally this could be quite threatening. A lot of young people were told don't go out today, So I think that's something we got to think about. And that probably underlying issue is what you were talking about, where people need to understand who we are and what we actually believe in. And people also need to tackle the hatred forever and say it's not welcome here. And both of them require the dialogue, which Imam Kelwick was trying to do outside the mosque and all the people that came out, but also that policy government engagement and organization of ourselves. And we really don't have the luxury to do one or the other. We've kind of got to do both. And I think you don't want to get caught up in everything's awful and hate crimes rising, everyone hates Muslims. So I had people say to me, oh my God, the UK must be an awful place for Muslims. Not really, in the grand scheme of things though. But at that time, it looked like people, it looked barbaric on the streets, busted windows and doors. And, when you watch it, you just think, God, did that actually happen? So I think, Sajid, there's this kind of balance we've got to have, that we're here, we're not going anywhere. But Tommy Robinson's planning another rally at the end of October. So that's one side. We've seen the Tory party and Reform, which we've not really talked about, but Reform got over 4 million votes, 7 million. They were the second ranking political party in this election. That's the real threat we're not really thinking about. We're focusing on Labour or Tories, but actually Reform indicates the average English person who's thinking, you're right, we need to get England back, we need to get our streets back. The more that's allowed to fester, the more stuff like this doesn't really go away. It just gets brushed under the carpet. And so we've got to really think about the things in some ways that we don't really, not the non-obvious, which is there are parts of our society that are scared of us and that hate us or that are fearful of us. And that's why actually this weekend we got to visit my mosque, lots of participating mosques, and we had to prepare them because they were all a bit like, oh, should we, shouldn't we, particularly in those affected areas. But everybody said, no, we have to continue to open our doors, because that's the prophetic model. That's what we are all about. But we're going to do our risk assessments too, and we're going to prepare a bit more. But there is that reality, isn't it, that we are just a different kind of demographic of people.
Sure.
We've got to think about things a bit differently too.
I mean, Abdullah, again, come back to you, and talking a little bit more about that element of it. Particularly straight after the riots, there was definitely a feeling. I mean, I myself, we were our younger daughters were getting old enough to walk back home from school, and my wife was unwilling to do that, and because she was genuinely worried, and I think that was right across the board. Now, there's an element of, as with many things in life now, that life is exaggerated in social media and the things that we read and the posts that we see, etc. So there will always be an element of that now in modern life, with the bubbles we create on online and social media. But and of course we could see the horrific nature of those marches. What was extremely worrying, of course, was when parents were encouraging young children to go along and see that kind of rioting and that kind of violence against not just obviously perpetrated against the community and the Muslim community, but even against the police, which was absolutely shocking behavior. But at the same time, do you take some comfort in the fact that the anti-racist marches that came out were, I mean, in the case of Glasgow, I think, when the pictures came out of the so-called protest that was supposed to happen here, it was difficult to spot them. I think there was about 15 of them or something amongst a sea of, at least easily a few thousand, anti, and of course the police had to really, really kind of surround them and protect them from being battered themselves. I mean, do you take heart in the fact that it would seem on the whole society still rejects the far right and even if they don't agree with Islam per se, will fight for the right for people to be able to believe the religion they want to? That was just
Yeah, absolutely. So that's been, so the connection is a bit unstable on my side. I hope you can hear me. But genuinely the response from the wider community has been nothing short of really incredible. I mean, straight after South Mosque, how they came out to kind of fix the masjid and to make sure that everything was kind of back to normal as best as possible. That was a real beautiful show of solidarity. Across the country, we saw so much. People kind of take it to the streets, whose streets, our streets, those chants kind of coming out across cities, across the country. We saw that epic image where they kind of just like took over the streets, and they said, listen, you guys, this kind of rhetoric of the far isn't allowed here. And so that's been really obviously positive. And I think on the whole, that's where people are. Of course, what Zara mentioned regarding reform and that kind of undercurrent that's kind of happening, and it's bubbling away, and this growing sentiment politically that's kind of leaning that way. And now the Tory party may be lurching more to the right. That's definitely something we have to keep our eyes on, and something we need to kind of challenge. But we've seen, because of Gaza, and we've seen the millions, the cumulative millions of people who come out week on week against injustice and in support of Palestine, and against the Zionist regime. It just shows the pulse of this nation. Yeah, and this was obviously also shown, from allies and other communities in the wake of these riots as well. So that was something that was and genuinely, we had loads of messages from organizations we'd worked with and said, listen, this is not on, if you need us for anything. So as an organization ourselves, our inboxes, we've got loads of messages from people saying, listen, we got you back. Don't worry about it. This is our fight as well. So it was really kind of positive to see that.
Yeah. So coming on to again now, to just the last part of the discussion, to talk about what we as a Muslim community could and should be doing now, and how we can be more proactive. Protective is important, and of course, as I say, when the time came to kind of like fight, a lot of youngsters, were quite keen in coming in the streets, etc., as they've always done. But how can, well, as people who are involved in organizations that are doing a lot across the board, both from the perspective of as I was saying, you had to respond from the protective side initially, and to looking after the mosques, etc., and making sure they're then, and I believe you're still involved in funds that can be distributed to help mosques better protect themselves. But the proactive element of it, and what we can do to uh, for British Muslims and parents even, to do more. What would you suggest? How can they get involved? What should we be doing, either as organizations or even as individuals, to counter this kind of narrative, to try and create a more positive and better future for Muslims in the UK?
Yeah, so I think it starts with being informed and working locally. So I think often people see it as a huge mountain to climb and we're never going to be able to do it. But actually, a lot of it is just your interactions locally. So, there's an emerging Muslim middle class now. And many of us are intersecting and engaging with society around us. So whether that's around things around, your local, the way you are with your parent teacher forum or your school, prayer room, all these, the different parts that we intersect, those are the places where change starts, and there's so many things that have changed and we've benefited from, historically, because everybody made it a little bit easier for us to be accommodated with prayer, be able to go to Jummah, and those are very primary, I'm talking about really primary things. But I think, often our non-Muslim colleagues and friends, we don't empower them to advocate on our behalf because they themselves don't really understand the issue. So if you think about Palestine, for example, right? We're all very well versed. We've grown up with it. We get it. We've got an affinity to it. The average non-Muslim, they don't understand what's happening in the Middle East, what's going on. For rioters as well, they wouldn't see themselves as any. So I had messages from non-Muslims saying, please no, this doesn't represent us. It's got nothing to do with us, all the rest of it. We're allies. And what we've seen is a more and more of a culture of people, marking Ramadan, and sell it. It's become like a fixture in the British calendar, but also marking Islamophobia Awareness Month, or as Islam Awareness Weeks were good. So those are the bigger campaigns. But I think it's all about, we do the Macmillan coffee morning together. Did you know, offering that conversation and dialogue, being good neighbors. It's very simple things, because at a local level, that's where because we're obviously the big national bodies dealing with the big news narratives. But you and I know it's how people talk about us when we're not in the room that makes a difference, right? Who defends you when it's important, and who comes out. And that was the whole point about Southport. Neighbors came out. We don't talk to our neighbors. They don't know us. They don't understand our issues. They don't get it. And then when we talk about like Islamophobia, that in itself is quite a confusing term for people. Like, what on earth is Islamophobia? What does it look like? Am I Islamophobic? So some of the trainings that we do, people are really they just kind of want to know about Islam, and they don't really know how to convey that to us. They want to understand, they've got questions, but we often make it a bit difficult to ask, or we ourselves don't know. So I think it's really just about, at a very basic level, being informed ourselves to understand it, talking to people, making the small changes, and then when these bigger issues happen, and figuring out what is our way through our organizations or through our spheres of influence to tackle that. What we found, particularly in Palestine, was a lot of us just didn't understand the language of politics, the language of policy, who is who, and how does government work, and how does power work. And not everybody needs to do that. That's quite complicated, right? But I think at a very basic level, I don't know if it sounds smart enough, my answer, but it is really locally driven change. It's young people going to university, understanding how to talk about who they are and what they do. And I know you've got lots of circles from what you've talked about, Sajid, so they should help a little bit. But that's my humble opinion. I could get into the complexity, and we need academics, and we need policy, and we need all of those other things. But I think for people here, it's
Sure.
really simple.
And Abdullah, if I could just ask you the same, we'll open up the questions straight after, but just Abdullah, if I can come to yourself to say, what advice can you give to individuals, say parents and individuals, about how they can best proactively push this notion of Islam?
Well, yeah, I mean, the greatest dawah is your actions, really. And I think when it comes to showcasing the best of who you are, it starts with the micro, definitely. And just realizing first and foremost that every single one of us, regardless of the challenges, are going to be questioned about our effort. That's it. Our effort. And so if we take that right step, and what we've seen over this past year is something incredible, is that when we see that there is something that needs to kind of be done or dealt with, especially on macro major issues like justice, but even smaller issues, when you work for and do nobly for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you want to kind of show Islam in the best possible way, that you want to make sure that there's this evil in society that you want to kind of push back against. When you do that for Allah and you make that step, Allah takes 10 steps towards you, and something beautiful happens. A small effort from you means someone else who's similarly on the same wavelength kind of connects to you, and things end up growing, and movements start to, things that you couldn't even imagine happening start to happen. So take those steps in whatever kind of, wherever you are, whatever space you're in, you're at school, you're at uni, you're at the work, whatever you are, take that step sincerely for the sake of Allah, to kind of show to Allah, Ya Allah, I want to present Islam in the best possible way that is pleasing to you. You take that one step, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take 10 steps towards you. And this is real, this is seen. People are, talk about this. I didn't realize this was going to grow into this big thing. How did this happen? But because you were intentional and you were sincere, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things happen. But that's nice, and it's a nice kind of quote or whatever. But brothers and sisters, we also have to kind of think outside the box a bit, I guess. And I guess that's probably not for everyone, but when it comes to the political work that we do, there's some thinking that needs to happen, because we've been doing a lot of things in very similar ways when we come to try to challenge things, and maybe we need some new thinking as well about how we kind of challenge it. I don't necessarily have the answers. We obviously have to kind of be vigilant and look after ourselves and make sure that our families are protected and things like this. But we are not people of despair. We're not ummah of despair. We're ummah of optimism, action, and so we need to kind of show that when you do that, there is going to be a risk, because the nature of a Muslim is that they are muslih. They are people who want to rectify, to want things to be, and when you take that step, you're going to step on a few toes, right?
Yeah.
Just by the very nature of you being a good practicing Muslim. But don't worry about those risks. If there is genuinely something challenging to you and your family that you want to protect, absolutely 100% do that. But we're in a dawah organization like ISB, and so many people have kind of gone through these ranks and have done so much good, and these are teachers like Sajid and some of the youngsters who are here, who are listening. This is the steps that you have to kind of take. The road to presenting Islam as the Prophet ﷺ showed us isn't necessarily paved in gold. There are going to be some thorns on the way. That's absolutely fine. It's for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah we will, through this kind of push back against some of the challenges that we have. But take those steps, make the effort in whatever capacity you have that Allah has opened for you, and you will see some miraculous things happen, inshallah.
Right. Jazakallah khair. We've got about 10 minutes or so left. I know that Zara has to shoot off soon. But if I can open it to the audience and the participants, if anybody has any particular questions or comments you want to make as well about your experiences of what happened at that point in your communities. We've got people from all over the country here. So it'd be good to gauge that. So if anybody wants to, you can either message in the group or you can just unmute and ask a question or make a comment. For quite a bit, or get any of these with comments. So we'll see. Looks like it's a quiet night tonight. Any questions or comments on anything we discussed tonight? It'd be interesting to
Pick
know.
people up. Pick
It'd
people
be
up.
interesting. Yeah, talk about
Get them awkward.
just talk about getting motivated and kind of doing stuff. Sarah, yeah. If you Sarah Saigel, if you
Assalamu alaikum. I'm so sorry. I don't know if you've already touched on this. We had a meeting. We've got an event on Saturday. You probably saw the post. I'm so sorry. We had a planning meeting and it was coinciding. And I was thinking the quicker we can finish, the quicker I can get into this. I don't know if you've touched on this, but I would really be interested in your perspectives. And I'm really sorry you don't have to answer if it's off topic. So I don't know what you've been saying so far, but I'd like to pick your brains on risk management. In terms of what we say and statements that we make at this time, because it seems so much that with what's happened in Gaza, what's happening ongoing, and with the riots, there is just so much cancelling of groups and of people who are saying what is not online. So what advice would you both give in terms of navigating this area of public statements, even personal statements on social media, letters, making a stance, because we can't stay silent, but making that stance safely. Because what I'm seeing is so much silence when people are saying, well, we're murabbis, we're also role models, but you're role modeling silence to the youth, and the youth are seeing this. So silence is not the answer. But how do we navigate this safely? I'm struggling with this, and I'd really love to hear your views.
Shall I go? Yeah, so I mean, look, I think it's been the biggest issue of this whole I think what we found ourselves, lots of people really exposed in terms of their social media and emotionally charged rhetoric, which may not in itself be problematic, has become problematic. So, and that's, I mean, even LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn used to be a place where nobody really put anything apart from congratulations, and then it became, Palestinian, it became a kind of warring place. What I'd say is that you've got to be considered in your view. You've got to realize like there are rules and regulations as to what you can and can't say. So we have to accept that. And I think there is no free space. It seems to be, it claims to be this platform where you can say what you want. No, you can't. I think number one is you have to be considered, and you need to know there are rules and there are things like Hamas is a prescribed organization. So, we'll leave it there. So there's things that you can't say. There's also a really considered way of what you can say. And what I would say is that often we forget who we're giving this message to and what do we want them to do with it, right? So when people are talking about LinkedIn and stuff, I said, well, if you're trying to take your colleagues on board, writing a scathing message about, war crimes and stuff, they may not necessarily get. But if you're trying to talk to an unjust, we have to look at the people who do it really well. And sometimes the best thing is to reshare what someone else who's credible says and fact checking that. Sometimes it's about saying, yeah, I really agree. But I think you've got to think about everyone's got a different level of risk. And maybe for some people, they can really, like Mehdi Hassan, right? You can go for it. You can say what you want, say the Warsi. But some of us in our day job may not be able to do quite as much. I think being considered, being informed, and really thinking about who am I trying to get this message to and who's going to. So if I only have 100 followers and they're all, mums and dads at my school, then maybe, I want to think about using some, and sometimes it's about being heard and being validated. So we really got to think, and that's why it's really important, and we really don't have this, is having a space to chat with one another and being able to express how we feel. And that's what's been missing. So often people have taken it to social media, which is not necessarily the right place for some of the things that we say. And also, if you are holding a political office or civic office or whatever, you need to respect that office is going to have limitations on how far you can go. And so I think where we've been caught out is people being really emotional, really charged, and and rightfully feeling hurt, but then realizing actually, maybe I just want to record that video to myself first before I post it, and just taking a minute. And I would say that there is really no limitation. I mean, our faith actually tells us to preach beautifully, right? The kind of idea is that you're supposed to be in our communication, people are supposed to be attracted to what we say. Even if we're calling out the injustice, there's still a way of saying it in a way that is quite reflective and poignant. But if we're saying things that are hate and charge and inciting more hate, probably isn't the best way to go. So it's a very diplomatic answer to a very complicated issue. And what I'd say is that you've got to figure out who is your audience, who are you sharing this with, how is this going to land, and what is the level of risk you're prepared to take if you do share it, and is losing your job one of those? Because that is certainly on the table, right? And if you can just cool off, switch your phone off, take a breather, and then come back to it, might always be the best way, or get other people to share it and read it before you post. Is that really okay if I pop off after?
I know you've got to go, but can I just
Yeah, sure. I'll wait.
you're used to 1 minute answers any on Min's Tell.
Sure.
We had a question from Ishtiaq who's asking how you've kind of covered a little bit about this, but how do you advise engagement with mainstream political parties when there's so many examples of corruption on different levels, both national and local. So he was talking about positive engagement with mainstream parties.
I think you have to. I think it's both your political right to do so. They are paid by tax, it's public money that funds all of these ministers and MPs and political parties and everyone, it's a representative model. So it's part of your contract, social contract, to engage. You don't do any favors by not engaging, but engage where it fits and engage on the terms that are comfortable for you and also aligned to what you're trying to achieve with that engagement. So for us as MCB, we have to engage with all colors, whether we like them or not, maybe not reform, but we've got to engage with all the colors, and we've got to think about, okay, locally, you should be engaging with your MP, right? They should know how you think and feel. That's why we did the Let Right to Your MP campaign. Nationally, absolutely. So if there's things that you feel passionate about, then ISP can absolutely write and say, well, what's going on, right? As a legitimate organization that represents Muslim voices, why would we take ourselves out of that? And what, you may feel, oh, it's no benefit, it's not going to achieve anything, but that's beside the point. You still have to do it because it should be recorded and people should be held to account. So my view is that you should engage on the issues that matter, whether that is about local MP constituents, whether it's about hate crime and Islamophobia, whether it's about Palestine, whether it's about cost of living crisis, or whether it's positively inviting them to your next event and helping to educate them, or whether you turn up to a surgery and say, right, what are you doing locally? So I think there's lots of referencing, but if you do that, then it pays off in the longer term, because there might be a junior MP now that becomes a minister in a while, and you could have formed a relationship. That can be of any political party and color. So we can't write everybody off. There is some very good, well-meaning people in politics that have been there for a long time. And we are quite tough as a community, and we have lots of issues in ourselves as well, got to reflect, we're not the easiest to deal with. We do come with our own challenges. So I think, when it came to Muslims becoming councillors, that's because we needed planning and burial and permission, right? When it comes to MPs, we go to Afsal and Naz, we need to talk about this in Parliament. So we don't do any of that, then who will speak for us when it matters? And, we had Hamza, obviously short-lived, but Hamza and Anis and Sadiq Khan, we may or may not agree with them. We may not think they're effective or not, but the representation is still really important. And they will inspire more young people to go for it and say, no, I'm going to do it differently. And Zara Sultana, obviously, she says whatever she thinks. So, you have got a lot. And I think we have to be grateful for the Muslim and non-Muslims who do represent our corner and cause when it counts. Bit more than a minute, but I think it did the job, hopefully.
And just before you go, is there any particular campaign or anything you want to highlight from MCB coming up
So I think the main things now, obviously, October is Hate Crime Awareness Week, Islamophobia Month in November. I think with all that's going on, really, really important everybody gets involved, does something locally, really, really puts the effort in to do something, even if it's a coffee morning or an awareness event, or it could be something really positive. But I think all of us should really gear up around that. Sure, Abdullah, you'll share the website so we know what the theme is this year, and you can borrow an exhibition from men if they've got one spare. But certainly I think, and then the other final thing I'd say actually is we need to encourage our community to report. We met with TfL, Transport for London, and they said they only get 10 hate crime reports from Muslims a month. Yet we're claiming it's huge, right? So, and we know it is huge, but we have to encourage people to report. If they don't report, the stats show that actually there's no problem. So when we're saying, oh, we need a definition, people are going to say, well, where's the evidence to do that? And then finally, I think we should all continue to pressure the government in terms of its engagement with Muslims. So writing a letter and saying, where are we on this? Would be really good, I think, from ISB and others willing to do so.
Jazakallah khair. You got to head off, so Jazakallah khair, we appreciate it.
Assalamualaikum, bye.
Right.
Abdullah, let's come back to yourself and Sarah's question about sorry, I've blanked out. Was it the
No, the press. To us, I think. Hope Zara's answer was sufficient, and just like she said, sometimes if the right person has already kind of said the point, you don't need to say your own words. Just retweet, reshare. But people do need to kind of definitely be. One of the first things that happened post Gaza that we shared was about how we speak about it. So the first thing that we did, as soon as Gaza, one of the first things we did was to say to our community, speak about Gaza, but be mindful of these red lines, but then go for it. And so because we wanted people to really, and so we did it. And so, I was, on the front line. So we had, the Jewish Chronicle come after me and the Daily, whoever it was, writing articles about me, but I didn't say anything. Towards I stayed within the boundaries, and I know where the red limits, where the line is, and so but that's going to come with, I guess, experience and for Sarah and the point that she said, and other people who are representing organizations, there has to be some mindfulness 100%. And I think but there's examples, and one of the things we actually have seen is this growing, or there's been a lack of, I guess, for want of a better phrase, courage from a lot of Muslim organizations, whether it's Masajid or things like this, fear of the Charity Commission and things like this, and people really kind of falling in the shell because we don't want to kind of put our head above the parapet or something like this. And it's understandable to a degree, but that fear or that risk profile it won't wash, especially with our youth. They can see as clear as day that this is why aren't my leaders in our community saying this, as the Arabs say, with a full mouth, like saying it, fully brazen, this is wrong, this, however you want to word it. And this is really important for them to see. Obviously, you can't just go all guns blazing. There are limits, but I think you can reach out maybe to someone as with this ourselves, with its CFFM, the offshoot of Muslim Council of Britain, that monitors the media and stuff like this, who do media engagements and things like this, to know on this particular point, where can I go? And we did something on Masajid, because and what to say in khutbas, because a lot of them got caught out because their khutbas were being recorded, and then some Twitter page was recording them and saying, oh, look at them making dua for the oppressed. I wonder who they mean by that, or and so they were really scared to even make dua for Gaza because they thought someone was going to come after them. And so it was really mad. So we said, listen, don't be scared, for goodness sake, right? Have the courage, just be mindful of these few things. Otherwise, Bismillah, you have artistic license, and if anyone comes for you, you're within the lines. Don't worry about it. We need that courage. And Sarah's got her hand up to come back.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. I think the point that I'm making sort of is not so much our own personal social media, although I did mention it. It was organizationally, what I think is happening is there's a large cohort that are choosing to remain silent because there are a few organizations that are taking it on. And so it's let them take it on our behalf. And when they fall, we're safe. And I think that's just such a bad way to play it. I think if there was a sizable majority of us speaking, we can't all go down. And our khutbahs must not change. We have to pray for our ummah. So I just think the fear and the silencing is something we have to really take on as a community, because we are asking our young people to step in and step up as activists, yet we're not showing them the way at a critical time. And so we're failing them by remaining silent, and we're teaching them to be fearful. And I think that's worrying. What we all need to do is step up instead of letting a few steps so far forward that they then get chopped and we remain safe. It's a really, really dangerous game to play.
I mean, as an organization, Abdullah, that appeared on a list, no matter how short-lived it was, and faced the potential of being cancelled for speaking out. I mean, again, what recommendations, what advice would you give to organizations, well, not just even organizations, but individuals even in that respect? Yes, by all means, don't have the fear, but is there any particular advice you can give about how we make sure we toe the line?
Well, I mean, what line are we trying to toe? The thing is, if they don't, if an extremist government doesn't like you, or a far right government doesn't like you, then yeah, for us, this happened basically at the beginning of Ramadan. And alhamdulillah, we had a very helpful fundraising campaign during Ramadan because of it, right? Because people thought, you know what, if they're coming after you, you must be doing something right. Yeah. And in all honesty, I think part of the common denominator amongst especially some of the organizations listed or cause for concern that they trying to organize the Muslim community independently, right? And that's the challenge that they see as a threat, I guess. When you're working within the parameters, when you're doing everything above board, when one time they came after and they said one media interview saying, "Oh, but you guys are controversial," and I said, "What's wrong with controversy? Like your controversy is not controversy to it's all relative. Why are you going to cancel me because I'm controversial? The Reform Party is controversial and they got seats in Parliament. This fear has to be broken first and foremost. There has to be courage. We're not saying be gung ho and doing anything crazy, but this fear cannot rest within us. And it can't be, like you said, Sarah, like a few others going as kind of like scouts, canaries in the coal mine, just to kind of see what happens. Yeah. And then we know where the red lines are, oh, they got burnt, and then leave them to it. We, and what we got from a lot of masajid, especially during Ramadan, when, they were opening their doors for us they said, listen, we see that they're coming after you, but hopefully when you turn around, you see us behind you. We've got back effectively. And that was a really beautiful kind of thing to see, in honesty. So there is a growing courage. There is a growing, for want of a better phrase, audacity to kind of say, listen, this is my ground. And our younger generation, our youngsters, they don't have that fear. They're coming out and they'll say, they'll leave it what for, yeah, and they'll say it very, very candidly, right? And so if we're setting the example to say, listen, be brave. Our deen is about being brave, but also being wise as well. Don't have this fear element to you. Know that you're on the right side. Giving them those encouragements. That's how you're going to push the needle for our community moving forward. If we just stay scared, quiet, then we're going to get trampled on. We're going to get trampled on. So that's a message we have to kind of really deliver. On the engagement side for the question with the Sheikh, it's we were heavily involved in the Muslim Vote campaign, and part of why they came after us so heavily was because they said that, oh, the Muslim vote is this divisive sectarian thing. But when you look at articles written in the past decades, the Labour Party talk about how there is this Muslim vote and they lost the Muslim vote. So the Muslim vote has always been known as a thing. And so what the Muslim vote campaign did was that they just kind of wrestled the Muslim vote away from Labour Party, that had been the only one who really controlled the Muslim vote, and tried to make it independent of them, right? And it was an attempt that made mistakes, but this is definitely the right way to kind of move as a community to show that, listen, we're not going to be people who are just going to fall under one, you're going to pigeonhole us under one party, and we're just going to be fodder and not given any weight, because as a community, generally speaking, we don't have the money or the political clout. We have to say as it is, but we're highly concentrated in big areas, in really key seats, and so what we do have is political electoral power. Yeah, we can make or break a person getting the seat or not, and that's at the moment where our political weight is, candidly speaking. Like I said, we're not strategic in that we have funders here and members here, and we don't have that. And just like we saw in Birmingham, we took about 100,000 votes off Labour We had Labour MPs one time having 32,000 majority. Now they've got 1,500. Where they had 12.5, now they've got 700. Where they had 28, now they've got 2,000. You know, we overturned one seat. And that happened now. And we've got this politicized young generation because of Gaza, 14, 15, 16-year-olds who are going to vote in the next election. And you know, and we got them in numbers, mashallah, especially in heavily Muslim areas. We've got them in numbers, and that could easily take over the seat and push things in the direction that we feel might be useful.
We're coming to the end of our time, so Abdullah, to cut you off there. But
I'm sorry.
Very quickly, if you could, we had one last question, which was to do with what Zara was touching upon about reporting, etc. And that was, can you clarify what is hate crime and what's just someone having a bad day and taking it out on you, as opposed to actual hate crime?
Well, to be honest, it's down to the victim to make that decision, and you won't know. You know, you you just won't know. Some things are so obvious. Some things, you know. But you know what she said about the fact that the TFL said only like there are 10 reports in the last month, despite our. And it's absolutely right that we're not reporting as we should. If we did, the numbers would be mad. Honestly, like for the past 3 or 4 years consecutively, of all reported religiously motivated hate crimes, Islamophobia is basically 40% of the chart, the biggest by miles. And we don't even report, and it's still 40%. Yeah. You know, anti-Semitism is half in terms of what the Muslims, what is reported. And now over the past year, because of Gaza, you know, we've seen stats of between 400 and 600% increase. In fact, at the end of October, we're going to get the official stats from the Home Office of reported hate crimes, and they release it every October, at the end of every October. So that will be interesting to kind of see. But the reporting is mad. It is really important. It's data is like gold apparently. It was like really valuable. So, and you know, it helps us push policies and things like this. So if you're going to report to you know, obviously reporting to the police. You've got the Islamophobia response unit, which also provides you with caseworkers if you're a victim of Islamophobia, whether it's at work, on the street, whatever it is, and it's all free, and it's you know, they look after you in that kind of way. And get involved obviously with Islamophobia Awareness Month this November. The theme is seeds of change. The idea is that, you know, with a small action, inshallah, you can grow into something, which seems quite apt. But yeah.
I'm guessing though that if somebody is obviously Islamophobic, if they say something that's, you know, clearly against, they're targeting you as Muslims, whether they're having a bad day or not, the fact of the matter is that they have, you know, they are choosing to use that rhetoric, they're choosing to use that form of racism. So that should be reported, shouldn't it? Whether it's, you know, just a throwaway comment or not.
100%. 100%. 100%. I mean, when you look at what's kind of reported as, you know, sorry to kind of laugh a little bit, but as anti-Semitism, so there's a massive, like 1,000 something increase in anti-Semitism. But when you look at the stats from the CST themselves who record these stuff, so you've got people reporting that, oh, someone had a Palestine flag, and that was reported as anti-Semitism. Like what do you do with that? Yeah. And there was loads of stuff like that, which is obviously there's nothing for the genuine cause of anti-Semitism. And you know, that's a whole separate debate. But genuinely, like if you feel that you're a victim of Islamophobia, please report it. You know, at the very least, the data, the stat itself helps. But obviously more than that, if you are a victim, obviously you need support, then there are support structures out there.
Is there anything else, just as we come to the end of this, that you want to highlight from the work of men that people get involved with just now? You obviously mentioned that Islamophobia month's coming up in November, but is there anything else you want to draw people's attention to?
I mean, so we've got a few things happening, because obviously it's been a year since the genocide kicked off. You know, in a week or so's time, about 10 days. And so I think there's a national rally happening on the 5th of October in London. There's going to be regional events happening all over the place, whether it's kind of like silent vigils and things like this. So keep an eye out for that. But also yourselves, really get involved. You know, it's a year, and it's been a mad year for the Muslim community in the UK, with Gaza, with the elections, with the riots, and all the Islamophobia. So there's a lot to kind of get your teeth into and get involved in. So we've got a lot of stuff on our website. You can check check out men.org.uk. If you are interested in the work that we do, obviously you can go on there and maybe volunteer if you're interested, wherever you are in the country. But yeah, so the anniversary of obviously the genocide and obviously Islamophobia Awareness Month this November.
And Sarah's just asking about a pack on Islamophobia. Is that something that men have and can and pass on? If not, is it a recommendation, I guess?
Yes, I mean there's loads of information on our resources page. You'll see loads of stuff on in there. And again, if you go to the Islamophobia Awareness Month website, they've got a lot of resources on there as well. So whether it's for youth or guys at work like this that you want to kind of let them know about the issue of Islamophobia, then there's loads of resources, alhamdulillah.